Ding, you've earned 10,000 skeleton coins. Ding, you've triggered the achievement, Alchemy King of the World, and you've gained 500 base experience. Alchemy King of the World. Special achievement, obtained by earning a one-time income of over 300,000 skeleton coins by selling the same potion. You gain a permanent bonus, income from potion sales increased by 1, intelligence plus 1, eloquence plus 1. Inside the shop, Lin sat in the pile of money, counting the skeleton coins in his hands one by one. Since combat power can double, any aspect of combat power will definitely increase exponentially. The reputation of our Bloodsaw Potion Shop is absolutely top-notch. If you are troubled by hair loss, I'll brew another batch of hair growth potions tomorrow, and the price will definitely be cheap. At the same time, on a plain in the dark world, fully armed dark elves formed a column, gazing solemnly at the black mist ahead. The lead dark elf, with a serious expression, held a long spear ready for battle at any moment. This was the 5th day of their elf court's defense against the abyssal insect horde, and it was a crucial moment. If they could successfully withstand the fierce counterattack of the insect horde, they would wait for the arrival of reinforcements. Faint roars constantly emanated from the darkness. Vaguely, it seemed like pairs of crimson eyes were flickering in the darkness. Hasn't our supply arrived yet? The elf captain turned around, frowning at his subordinates behind him. Their situation was extremely critical. All routes for supplying reinforcements had been cut off. Now their only way was to transmit through vision. But their stock of vision stones was running out. If they couldn't resist the onslaught of the insect horde this time, their defense line would be completely breached tomorrow. Captain, a dark elf rushed over from a distance, panting heavily as he stopped in front of him, saying breathlessly, "I have established contact between the vision and the court. The court has urgently sent us some supplies, but the transmission through the vision is limited. The first batch that came over has just over 100 bottles of combat potions urgently purchased by the court. Hoping it can help us." He quickly placed the box he was carrying on the ground. Neatly arranged inside were rows of various types of composite potions. Half of them are emergency healing potions, 2/3 are auxiliary strength potions, and the remaining 1/3 is a few bottles of high-level combat potions urgently purchased by the court. He picked up a bottle of brown-red potion from it and handed it to the captain seriously. "Captain, take it." The elf captain frowned, taking the potion and looking at the murky and nauseating liquid inside, asking, "What kind of potion is this? Why does it feel like urine?" The elf said seriously, "The pressure on the supply lines of various major columns is too great, and the court's inventory is almost depleted. Therefore, the recently purchased potions are of uneven quality. But it is said that this kind of potion can almost double the user's combat power in a short period. Extremely powerful." Double. As soon as this statement came out, all the surrounding dark elves showed expressions of astonishment. They were very clear that potions that could significantly increase combat power in a short time were usually in short supply, and potions that could increase by more than double were ace-level potions that could be life-saving in critical moments. But at the same time, the side effects of such potions were also extremely severe. Some potions, even after taking them, would make the user extremely weak for many days. But regardless, such potions were still very useful. Any side effects? The situation is urgent, and it's not clear for the time being. How many bottles of this potion were sent? 5 bottles. The elf captain's gaze became heavy and said solemnly, "Distribute the potions. If it can really double combat power in a short time, I am confident that we can defeat that aberrant variant in this swarm. And as long as they could defeat that insect queen, the crisis of their defense line would be greatly alleviated. It's here." The elf captain suddenly raised his head, roaring, "Prepare for defense." The insect horde launched an attack like a tide. The captain took the lead, rushing into the swarm in an instant, wielding the long spear in his hand, ferociously tearing one reptile after another into pieces. His gaze locked onto the massive aberrant variant commanding the swarm deep within the horde. His eyes narrowed. If this potion could really double combat power, then he definitely had the confidence to slay that troublesome aberrant variant in the midst of this myriad of enemies. Snap! He opened the bottle, biting his teeth. He gulped down the potion in his hand in one go. And it was in that moment, he suddenly felt an indescribable surge of heat sweeping through his whole body from his stomach. His pupils dilated instantly. This kind of power. A shocked expression appeared in his eyes. He felt his strength rapidly increasing, as if all the blood in his body was boiling, as if the potion was a potent catalyst that instantly amplified his power enormously. And in the next moment, he roared to the sky. The armor all over his body instantly exploded. Under the astonished gazes of all the elves on the battlefield, their captain revealed his explosive muscles, those rock-like muscles throbbing. Captain, they were both shocked and overjoyed, because they, too, felt it in an instant. Their captain's aura seemed to have become much stronger all of a sudden. But just in the next moment, there was another loud explosion. Their captain's jet black and beautiful long hair, along with the armor that exploded, also instantly burst out, revealing the shining scalp underneath. Ding! A flash shot out from the round and shiny forehead of their captain, passing through the pupils of everyone present. All elves. Wow, so dazzling. How did even the hair explode? Almost at the same time. Boom, boom. Another loud explosion came from a distance. The dark elves turned pale in shock, then immediately turned their heads and immediately saw that the other 4 elves in their squad who took the potion were also like their captain in an instant. They exploded their clothes too. With muscles throbbing all over, their hair exploded vigorously. 5 or 6 flashes twinkled, making them the most dazzling on the battlefield. They are also bald now. The crowd of elves was greatly astonished. However, even though they were bald, it seemed like they had become much stronger all of a sudden. Could this be the side effect of that powerful potion? And in the next moment, in that surging power, the captain grabbed a long spear and roared, pointing towards the deformed creature deep within the swarm. Prepare to charge. Under the astonished gaze of the elven troops, the 5 elves who had taken the potion, armed with weapons, rampaged like primordial giants, charging at the deformed creature with unimaginable speed. Along the way, the numerous insects were easily swept away by them, as if cutting through vegetables. So strong. The captain and the others have become so strong all of a sudden. What kind of potion is this? To enhance combat power to this extent in such a short time. But Captain, at least put on some armor. Don't charge in naked. Captain, under their astonished gaze, the 5 bald, muscular guys bursting with powerful strength charged into the depths of the insect swarm like war gods. At the same time, in various parts of the dark world, one bald, muscular guy after another demonstrated their dominance in different areas. In the ears of Lin, who was preparing the flesh regeneration potion, various prompts kept coming in during these few hours. Obviously, all this popularity came from the 30 bottles of critical strike potion he sold earlier. However, Lin ignored it. At this moment, he was focused, standing in front of a large cauldron, staring at the viscous red liquid inside. Constant system prompts rang in his ears. Half an hour later, Lin bottled the freshly brewed potion one by one. Mission accomplished. Lin smiled, wiping off his sweat. This was one of the system rewards for his 2 formulas. Unlike the critical strike potion, the flesh regeneration potion was an auxiliary healing potion. Just by its name, it was clear that it could quickly regenerate flesh and recover from injuries. Top-grade potion. After use, it can quickly heal wounds and regenerate severed limbs, but it may have some minor side effects. He had produced a total of 17 bottles of this potion. However, with the precedent of the critical strike potion, Lin was curious about the possible side effects of this potion. Nevertheless, there shouldn't be any strange adverse reactions. Now, he just needed some guinea pigs. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of knocking came from outside the door. Lin immediately stood up, wearing a professional smile on his face, and said, "Welcome to the Bloodsaw Pharmacy. We sincerely serve you." In front of the shop, a fairy with a pair of pure black butterfly wings slowly landed. Covered in black knight armor, her chest was plump, and on the left side of her waist, a small sword hung. However, the right half of her body was bloody, and her arm seemed to have been torn off by something. An interface of her appeared in front of Lin. Chaotic friendly, small and exquisite, concentrated with essence. Originally from the fairy race in the surface world, a small part of them was banished to the dark world a long time ago. They gradually evolved to adapt to the dark environment, becoming the dark fairies. Possessing strong mobility and night vision, they are often kept as pets because their combat ability cannot compete with other races of the same level. "Please come in." Lin's gaze instantly fell on her completely torn arm. "My arm was eaten by a monster." The black moth fairy pointed to her bloody left arm. "I need treatment or I'll die." Seemingly naive and easy to deceive, a smile appeared on Lin's face. "Rest assured, our Bloodsaw Pharmacy is the best pharmacy within 100 miles of this wandering soul lane. We have a good reputation. Don't worry, even if your arm is burned to ashes, we can bring it back to you." The black moth fairy stared at him seriously. Although she wanted to believe, why did she always feel that there were some ominous factors hidden in this seemingly friendly smile? "You don't want to make me dizzy with medicine and then tie me up, hiding me in the attic to do some nasty things, right?" she asked seriously. This straightforward inquiry left Lin momentarily speechless. Was this a characteristic of this race? Why could she ask such questions directly in front of someone? And even if he wanted to, he wouldn't admit it. I won't, Lin replied seriously. That's good. The black moth fairy relaxed, letting out a small sigh of relief from behind the mask. Something's not right. This doesn't make sense. Why did the trust level increase by 10 points just by denying it once? Is it really that easy to raise the trust level? No, is it okay for you to relax just like that after casually asking a question? This is the dark world. The trait of being easily deceived is already written all over your face. Why did you ask such a strange question? Lin stared and couldn't help but ask. Snap. Because the elder before migration specifically instructed us that the creatures in this world are very evil. Many of our fellow beings are easily deceived by some evil races and then kept as toys. So, the elder told us that when facing outsiders, we must be vigilant. So, are you a liar or not? She squinted and asked dangerously. Lin said, no. That's good. The dark moth fairy sighed in relief, took out a water bottle from her arms, took a few sips, and relaxed. Is this how you increase trust level? Didn't your elder instruct you to be cautious? You just asked a question and started trusting strangers so easily. Is this really normal? You just said that your race is migrating. Lin asked in confusion. The dark moth fairy glanced at him and said, the elder said that such confidential matters cannot be revealed to any unfriendly creatures. Are you an unfriendly creature? Lin said, I am friendly. The dark moth nodded. Good, since you are a friendly creature, there's no harm in telling you. We are indeed migrating, going to settle in the mountains north of the Hellfire Plains. There is water and food there, enough for our tribe to thrive. It's a good place, really. Okay, he facepalmed. Lin felt he had already figured out a way to quickly infiltrate the inner circle of this tribe, or perhaps easily destroy them. This trust is too cheap. If this is a trait of their entire race, it's truly miraculous that they can survive in this world. Lin rubbed his temples in annoyance and asked, so, what are you? The dark moth fairy drank some water, wiped her mouth, suddenly stood up, and said seriously, I am the mighty knight commander of the fairy tribe, the first great knight to pass the trial. You can call me Lady Yuayu. My sword points the way for our tribe to advance. Playing, she drew a petite sword from her waist, pointed it forward, and shouted, the pioneer of the fairy tribe, the explorer of the great territory, the light that penetrates the dark world, the vanguard of the super long migration. Great Lady Yuayu, I will lead our tribe to a bright future. The two faced each other in silence. A crow flew overhead, leaving 6 dots. The awkward atmosphere spread shamelessly. The dark moth fairy climbed down from the table, sat straight on the chair, retracted her sword, closed her eyes, and said, sorry, couldn't help it. Lin was speechless. He found that this fairy was not only easy to deceive but also seemed a bit lacking in intelligence. To survive until now, she really must have been through a lot. But I'm curious, Lin asked seriously while cleaning the bloodstains from her severed arm. Why did you come to the Soul Alley in the south if your Hellfire Plains are in the north? It's probably a few hundred kilometers away from here, right? In his field of vision, Lin had already gained some understanding of the geographical environment around Soul Alley. Lady Yuayu closed her eyes, pulled out a small finger, and said, please don't say strange things. The vanguard has been moving north all along and will soon find our fairy tribe's new territory. Lin touched his chin, hesitated, and asked, where is north? Lady Yuayu extended her hand and pointed straight ahead, with her eyes closed. There, the direction of the finger. Lin hollowly said, are you sure? But the direction you're pointing is south. Are you sure you're not going the wrong way? Please don't doubt the vanguard's sense of direction. I've traveled 2,000 miles, crossed mountains and hills. Do you think I would go the wrong way? My intuition has always been very accurate. Do your tribes all rely on intuition to navigate? What else? Lin was momentarily speechless, then hesitated and asked, how far is your new territory from your tribe? Lady Yuayu closed her eyes, raised 5 fingers, and said, about 500 kilometers. Lin knocked on the table and said, then let me ask you, since it's only a 500-mile journey, why haven't you arrived after traveling 2,000 miles? Lady Yuayu froze. The fingers that were raised also froze in place. A strange silence enveloped the surroundings, as if suddenly realizing something that had always been ignored and difficult to understand. He took out a compass from under the counter and placed it in front of her. It's a gesture of goodwill. 200 skull coins, sold to you at a friendly price. With this, I believe you won't get lost again in the future. What is this? Lin closed his eyes. A compass, a mysterious instrument that allows you to accurately determine the direction in the dark world. I sell it to others for 1,000 skull coins, but for you, I'll sell it for 200 skull coins. Consider it sympathy. The fairy named Yuayu showed a curious expression, reached out to take the compass, and played with it. How do I use it? Lin pointed to the needle on top. Do you see that needle? As long as it points in a certain direction, that's the south. If you want to go north, just go in the opposite direction of the needle. Isn't it simple? Lady Yuayu tilted her head. It's really magical, simple and practical. Special achievement. Successfully selling any item at more than 100 times the cost will grant a permanent bonus. Intelligence +2, morality -1. A fairy named Yuayu held a compass and earnestly said to Lin, "Boss, you are indeed a very friendly outsider. You are the first person who, after encountering this fairy, didn't intend to use drugs to knock me out and take me away. You are someone I can consider as Yuayu's close friend." Lin, for some reason, hearing these two notifications didn't bring any joy, but instead, a sense of guilt rose in his heart. Indeed, he was a morally corrupt person. Lin rubbed his forehead and said, "Since I can be considered a close friend, let me kindly remind you. Those who claim they are not bad may not necessarily be good, and those who say they won't deceive you may not necessarily be truthful. Don't casually eat things given to you by others. Don't casually turn your back on someone. Don't casually go home with someone. Just remember these few sentences, and you'll be safe." The fairy named Yuayu lifted her knight's helmet and earnestly said, "It's very sincere advice. I've remembered it." Apparently, she didn't remember, but since she managed to survive 2,000 miles away from home, she probably had many means to stay alive. Regardless, meeting briefly, Lin's goodwill ends here. Lin's gaze fell back on her arm. After cleaning the blood, he could see the gruesome marks of tearing on it. It looked as if something had bitten her entire arm off, very horrifying. "How did you get this wound?" Lin asked curiously. The fairy named Yuayu closed her eyes and said, "While on an adventure, I encountered a sturdy giant. I asked for directions, but the giant bit towards me. If this knight hadn't dodged in time, what would have been bitten off wouldn't be just an arm but my head. It was a monster much stronger than me, and not its match at all." Click. The mask of the knight's helmet dropped again, covering her cheeks. Lin was speechless. "All right, considering your injuries, you've done some basic first aid. But for infection prevention, we need further cleaning. Take off the armor, I'll perform a minor surgery for you." Click. The fairy named Yuayu lifted her knight's face mask and seriously said, "Refusal. Knights never take off their armor." Lin shrugged and said, "Okay, you don't have to. Do you want anesthesia?" "Just a reminder, without anesthesia, it will be very painful." The fairy Yuayu earnestly lifted her face mask and said, "Refusal. Anesthesia only affects the knight's reaction speed, and my pain tolerance is max. It's the result of a knight's rigorous training." Lin said, "Good. You're the second person I've seen so brave in front of me." A few minutes later, at the operating table, the fairy named Yuayu lay flat on the operating table, seriously looking at Lin holding two razors. "Ready to start. Now, I'm like a fish on the chopping board." Lin had a dark line on his forehead. This fairy always liked to say strange things seriously. Lin's expression became serious, and he said, "If you can't bear it, scream. Don't bite your tongue off. I'm starting to cut." Ding! A cold light flashed on Lin's surgical knife. The fairy named Yuayu closed her eyes and said, "I've already said, my pain tolerance is max. The pain resistance attribute is already maxed out. I won't." Splat! With one cut, the fairy Yuayu instantly widened her pupils, opened her mouth, and let out a high-pitched, unexpected scream. "Why does it hurt so much more when you cut than others? Did you use something strange that causes extra pain?" "My pain resistance is maxed out. A knight possesses the perfect quality of endurance. I won't." "Aren't you the one who said your pain resistance is maxed out? Don't twist around. Twisting will cut other places." But, although it's maxed out, every cut you make breaks through the max and makes it so painful." Splat! It's going to split. Yuayu is going to split. It's going to break. Don't make such strange noises. It's just a few cuts. You've hurt me. The knight is going to be painfully killed. Help, help. It's going to be torn apart. I want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore. To hell with you. The fairy named Yuayu shouted loudly, opened her sharp teeth, and was about to struggle to give Lin's arm a fierce bite. Obviously, under this tremendous pain, even the mighty knight had reached the edge of losing sanity. Lin became anxious. While forcefully pressing down on the fairy's head, who was trying to bite his arm, Lin quickly picked up a rolling pin nearby at the moment when the fairy opened her mouth. It went in all at once, pressing against those sharp teeth. Blue. The fairy named Yuayu widened her eyes in shock, desperately resisting. After more than 10 minutes, the fairy Yuayu's brain lay on the operating table, with black eyes staring blankly, the whole person completely limp. Sweat soaked her entire body due to the intense pain. Snap! Lin pulled out the rolling pin from her mouth to prevent her from biting off her tongue. Satisfied, Lin took off his gloves and said, "The initial cleaning is done. You can get up now, we can proceed to the next step." The fairy named Yuayu climbed up blankly from the operating table. Then she forcefully shook her head with the knight's helmet on, blankly rubbed her eyes, and said, "It's like having a nightmare. I almost broke." Snap! Lin wiped the bloodstains off her injured arm, closed his eyes, and said, "Normal reaction." Yuayu stared at her left shoulder where the arm had been cleaned, shook her head vigorously, then looked at Lin seriously, pointing at him. "You're the first man who made me so painful. You've left a deep impression on me." She grabbed the surgical table, squinting her eyes, and picked up the thick rolling pin. Looking at the teeth marks on it, she narrowed her eyes and said, "You're also the first man who dared to use such a thick thing to put it in my mouth." Ding! Black Moth Fairy's impression of you plus 50. Don't just casually say strange things. What do you mean by a man who shuts your mouth? Clearly, it was a stress response to prevent you from biting people randomly, right? Being so casual like this can create misunderstandings. Lin widened his dead fish eyes and forced a smile, saying, "Let's not talk about useless things. The most important step is still ahead. Your whole arm is already useless. If you want to regenerate it, there is a way, but it depends on whether you can afford it." The fairy named Yuayu said seriously, "I can afford it. Before I set out, I brought all the family funds with me." Then, under Lin's gaze, she pushed the large knight's helmet, then, with effort to maintain balance, reached into her chest from the collar. Lin widened his eyes. What kind of operation is this? And in the next moment, the fairy Yuayu forcefully pulled it out under Lin's gaze. Clatter! She sat on the ground with a thud, and a large bag of money was pulled out from her chest, scattered on the ground, making a crisp sound of coins colliding. And just under Lin's gaze, after pulling out the bag of coins, the originally plump chest instantly deflated. Fake, fake. The fairy named Yuayu gave a thumbs up seriously, and said, "All the money is here." She closed her eyes, reached into the money bag, grabbed a handful of black skull coins, placed them on the operating table, and said, "Enough." Lin stared. Naive, flexible, wealthy, easy to deceive. She really covered all the elements just by herself. Lin shook his head, discarded all the unrealistic thoughts in his mind. He quickly turned around, took out the prepared flesh regeneration potion from the cabinet behind him, and smiled. "Since that's the case, let me use the potion I recently developed to treat you. You have to pay for what you get. This is a very advanced potion, and it will cost you 3 black skull coins per bottle." Fair, right. His own potion was finally being put to use. The Black Moth Fairy was startled, then shook her head and said seriously, "It may not work. Because my constitution is special, and my resistance to various toxins is already maxed out." She closed her eyes, seriously raised a finger and said, "That means negative toxins have no effect on me. Similarly, positive healing potions also have no effect on me. So, it's a difficult situation." Saying that, she took out a green potion from her pocket, forcefully opened the stopper. Puff! A large skull-shaped smoke emerged from the bottle. "For example, this is a highly toxic potion commonly used by our fairy clan. I've been drinking it since I was little, but it has no effect." With that, she lifted her head and, gurgling, drank it all. Snap! The bottle fell to the ground. The remaining potion emitted bursts of green smoke. Burp! She wiped her mouth and said seriously, "You see, such a strong hallucinogenic poison has no effect on me. If it were an ordinary fairy, they would have already passed out and been picked up and slapped by someone. But I'm still lively." "She is indeed a poisonous girl," Lin said speechlessly. "Then why are you here with me? Taking a chance?" The fairy Yuayu said seriously, "Although I'm not very afraid of pain, it's still troublesome to be without an arm. So, I want to find a medical shop. If possible, getting a powerful prosthetic is also good." Lin looked at the flesh regeneration potion in his hand. He thought for a moment, then smiled. "All right, but we can try. My potion is very special. It might have some effect, who knows? If it doesn't work, no charge, since it's a formula provided by the system. No matter what, it should have some differences from the potions in this world." He was quite confident in the system. Lin opened the potion's stopper and carefully applied it to the severed arm under the curious gaze of the Black Moth Fairy. Cool, tingly, and a bit painful. Will it work? Her voice also became nervous, as if she didn't want to have only one arm in the future. A prosthetic would never be as flexible as a real arm. Wait a moment. Honestly, this potion is the first time I've used it on a living being. We'll have to observe how it goes. Huh? The fairy Yuayu was stunned. Watching Lin seriously, she stared with anticipation. Time passed slowly. A few minutes later, Yuayu sighed, saying seriously, it seems to have no effect. My constitution is too special. My resistance to various potions is already maxed out. If it doesn't work, please install a suitable prosthetic for me. But in the next moment, she suddenly felt a slight itching at the wound on her left arm. She was surprised. Then she immediately turned her head to look at her shoulder. Instantly, her expression became astonished. This is, only to see the wound on her arm was visibly growing tender and pink at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the bones showed signs of growth. Is it working? She exclaimed in shock. This was something she absolutely did not expect, because she was very clear about her constitution. Her resistance to all external substances, while helping her avoid many dangers, also caused a lot of trouble in her daily life. Things that others could solve with a bottle of healing potion took her a long time to naturally heal. But she never expected the potion provided by this human doctor actually had an effect on her. The rate is a bit full, and your constitution does have some influence on the potion, but it's not significant. Lin observed the slowly growing arm seriously. Then he quickly took out a notebook, recording the potions on the spot performance. Yuayu stared, nervously watching the arm slowly growing, beads of sweat falling from her forehead. Good skill. Doctor, your potion is really amazing. 2. Amazing. No wonder you've left such a deep impression on me. So capable. Ding. Black Moth Fairy's favorability towards you plus 50. Let's not be too quick to have good feelings for me. Lin solemnly recorded the changes in the experiment and said, describe what you feel. I'll make a record. The fairy Yuayu swung her legs and said, tingly, a bit numb, a bit painful. Not just the arm. Other places are also tingling and numb. Lin recorded one by one. What else? The fairy Yuayu said, very comfortable. Feels like the arm is growing, and it feels like I have 2 extra arms. Very strange. Lin recorded it. Then he raised his head, about to say something, but he suddenly widened his eyes, stiffening in place. Just behind the Black Moth Fairy's shoulder, a sticky tentacle with a wrist-thick thickness slowly grew out from the armor. Under Lin's stiff gaze, that tender tentacle rubbed the fairy's face and left sticky liquid on her face. The fairy Yuayu closed her eyes, shook her head randomly, and said, Doctor, don't casually lick my face. Although I know you are really amazing and have left a deep impression on me, casually touching my body is still not allowed. Ding. Black Moth Fairy's favorability towards you plus 5. Then, under Lin's gaze, that tentacle slowly entered the helmet of the fairy named Yuayu. Slowly, it moved along the seams of the helmet, extending into the armor. Don't casually touch my neck. It's very itchy. Wait, how can you casually reach into my clothes like this? Lin was completely stiff. Well, I think you should open your eyes and take a look. The fairy named Yuayu opened her eyes and instantly saw Lin standing 2 meters away with a frozen expression. She was puzzled. Hey, doctor, why are you so far away? Lin stiffly replied, I was originally this far away. The fairy Yuayu was momentarily stunned, then immediately felt the squirming sensation on her neck. She subconsciously turned her head to look at one side of her helmet. The expression of the fairy Yuayu instantly became hollow. The next moment, an explosive high-pitched scream echoed through the entire Yaohan lane. The Black Moth Fairy Yuayu screamed incessantly. Tentacles. Why do I have tentacles on my body? Help. Strange tentacles are touching my body. Don't move. Uncle will help you. Seeing this, Lin rushed over, quickly grabbing the base of the tentacle. Help. It's slippery. It's about to go in. Go in. Where is it going? There's a hole there. What on earth? Lin quickly pressed her down, using all his strength to grab the base of the tentacle, gritting his teeth, and difficultly pulling the tentacle out from her helmet. The tentacle kept moving in Lin's hand. There was slime everywhere. The terrified fairy's sanity plummeted, trembling, holding her helmet, screaming in horror. It grew out of me. It actually grew out of my shoulder. Hold on. Lin quickly pressed the tentacle on the operating table. Then the blade fell. The tentacle immediately fell under the table. Lin slapped the tentacle a few times, smashing it to pieces. The fairy Yuayu, still in shock, grabbed Lin's chest, trembling, turned her head, and looked at the still wriggling tentacle. What's going on here? Lin pondered. It seems to be a small side effect of the potion. Side effect. The fairy Yuayu exclaimed in shock. Lin closed his eyes. Yes, as you know, the stronger the potion, the stranger the side effects. Since this powerful growth potion can make you regenerate limbs, it will definitely produce some other things as well. This is a normal phenomenon. Normal. The fairy Yuayu was dumbfounded. Don't be afraid, doctor is here, just trust me. Listen to me, no matter what strange things grow out this time, I can cut them off for you. You have to believe me. Ding! A dazzling light appeared on the bone-cutting knife in Lin's hand. The fairy Yuayu stared blankly. Really? Lin nodded seriously. Really? And don't you want a healthy arm? For the sake of a healthy body, what does growing a little something strange matter? The fairy Yuayu was stunned. Well, that makes sense. But why does she feel like he has some other strange motive? One last time. The fairy Yuayu, with tearful eyes, said. Lin gave her a thumbs up, giving high praise and affirmation for her unyielding courage. Then, under the trembling gaze of the black moth fairy, the new potion was once again applied to the severed arm. Time passed slowly, and it was in the next moment. A terrifying tail has grown. Cut it off. Quickly cut it off. I feel it. There's something strange in the back of my clothes. Another sticky tentacle. Cut it off. Cut it off. Wings. New wings have grown. Hey, they look pretty good. Maybe I can keep them. I said I could keep them. Why did you cut them off? After more than 10 minutes, Din, you have completed the mission, limb regeneration. The fairy Yuayu lay there shivering, her fully restored arm moving slightly, and in the wooden barrel next to her, all the strange limbs that were just cut off. How do you feel? The fairy Yuayu blankly said, I feel. My whole body is full of strange things. Don't be afraid, it's all illusions. The things that shouldn't grow, I've cut them all off for you. The fairy Yuayu, with difficulty raising her trembling hand, murmured. Potions cost money, but cutting off those strange things doesn't cost money, right? Tears welled up in Lin's eyes. New Year's special, one cut gets you one free. A few minutes later, Yuayu Fairy stood up dazedly, letting Lin dress her up like a doll, putting on her helmet, hanging a bag, and wrapping up the strange organs that were chopped off her body, carrying them behind her. Considered as a memento, a perfect treatment, Lin gave her a thumbs up with a smile, saying, if you think this treatment is good, you can give our store a thumbs up. The next time you come, I'll give you an 11% discount. Something seems off. I remember the last time I applied the medicine to you, nothing strange grew on your body. Lin's gaze hesitated. So, I'm not sure if there's still some mutation happening to you. Lin hesitated and asked, do you feel anything unusual in your body? If you do, it's best to say it now. Nothing strange, she said, her chest held high. Lin sighed in relief, smiling, that's good. It means the potion doesn't cause mutations every time it's used. Thank you for your cooperation and experimentation. Heta. Lin was extremely pleased. Relieved, Lin returned to the operating room with large steps, planning to tidy up, because it's uncertain when he'll encounter such a good customer again. But at this moment, clang, clang, sounds of metal collisions came from below. Lin's ears twitched instantly. In the next moment, Lin saw the bag on the ground, and his expression suddenly stiffened. Wait, this seems to be. He subconsciously reached out and opened the bag. Immediately, the bag was filled with black skull coins, almost blinding Lin's eyes. Lin was instantly shocked. Wait, something's not right. Why is the little fairy's money bag here? Just a moment ago, didn't he clearly see her chest bulging, almost bursting out of her clothes? He thought she had stuffed the money bag in there again. But, if the money bag wasn't stuffed by her, what is she holding against her chest now? Could it be that the fake turned real? Lin's mind went blank. He quickly grabbed the money bag and rushed out of the door, but the little black moth fairy had long disappeared from his sight. Time once again reached evening. Has the teacher not returned yet? Lin looked at the black mist outside the door with a hesitant expression. Because today is already the third day. Even if the teacher is delayed by something, there should be news by now. Lin walked back and forth in the hall. Although his teacher wasn't human, usually he spoke coldly to him. But in the past 2 years, without the care of the teacher, a small human like him wouldn't have survived in this dark world, let alone mastering so many medical and alchemical techniques without the guidance of the teacher. Hopefully, the teacher will be back early tomorrow. Lin looked worriedly at the black mist outside. He took down the almost extinguished soul lamp from the pillar, ready to close. But just at this moment, whoosh, a sudden movement. His pupils suddenly dilated, and then a painful expression appeared on his face. Lin coughed up a pool of foul-smelling and crimson blood under his gaze. Then, right in front of him, the pool of blood began to struggle and crawl, and on the ground in front of him, it twisted into several hideous blood letters. Those 6 crimson blood letters lasted only a few seconds before immediately giving off blue smoke and disappearing on the spot. At almost the same time, his ears also immediately heard the system's prompt. He quickly crouched down, frowning at the traces of blood disappearing on the ground. Teacher. He instantly recognized the handwriting of those 6 blood letters. Did his teacher use some kind of spell to send him a warning? What's going on? Lin raised his head abruptly, looking with a puzzled expression towards the depths of the black mist outside. Simultaneously with the teacher's warning, there was a system-triggered mission. Moreover, compared to the previous 2 survive missions, the rewards this time were several times better. It was even more generous than the day when he encountered the root monster. This clearly indicated that the crisis he was facing this time would be extremely severe. What is it? Could it be that the teacher encountered some crisis outside, and that crisis spread to his blood-saw pharmacy? Almost without any hesitation, Lin quickly calmed down, rushing back to the shop with unimaginable speed. He didn't choose to stay, since the teacher had sent a warning. Staying here would undoubtedly be extremely dangerous. First, spend the night at the blood-clothed spirit's house. Although she might violate me, it's definitely safer than staying here. Lin packed up, raised his head, and quickly stepped through the door. A cold wind blew from the depths of the black mist. Lin's steps, which had just stepped out, instantly froze in place. In the depths of the black mist, a massive silhouette slowly emerged in his field of vision. Thud, thud. The immediately following sound were repeated footsteps that seemed to make your heart burst. And that pitch-black fog, for some reason, was slowly turning towards a blood-red color, a difficult-to-describe pungent smell of blood rushing over. In an instant, Lin rushed back to the shop, gritting his teeth as he quickly closed the door. His gaze flickered, and the soul lamp he held in his hand swayed wildly, almost extinguishing completely. It's over. There's no escape. He didn't expect the crisis to come so quickly, and the system's warning was already very clear. This crisis was directed at him. Or rather, it was targeting the Bloodsaw Pharmacy. Since I can't run away, I can only save myself. Len gritted his teeth. Without a second word, he quickly rushed into the backyard and forcefully closed the gate. Boom. A loud noise. The door of the pharmacy exploded, and billowing red mist, no longer protected by the soul lamp, rushed in. A massive silhouette was reflected on the ground in the lobby. Following that, a wave of foul-smelling blood wafted through the air, like a decaying corpse slowly walking on the ground. Thud, thud. The sound of heavy footsteps came. In the surgery room in the backyard, Lin leaned against the wall, holding the bone-cutting knife in one hand and the revolver in the other, serious and frowning, pressed against the wall. The soul lamp had already gone out. This meant that night had fallen. Now, there was nothing left to protect him. Splash! The direction of the lobby echoed with the crisp sound of potion bottles falling to the ground, one after another. Lin closed his eyes, gritting his teeth, and the veins on his temples throbbed violently. Splash! Every time a sound of a broken bottle echoed outside, a number appeared vividly in Lin's mind. Not fear, regret, because that was all small change. Round, rolling small change, more important than life itself. Lin squinted his eyes, his gaze flickering. Fighting head-on was not advisable. Curse removal. He issued the command. Yes, in an instant, Lin felt the demonic curse drawn from the blood-clothed spirit fading away in his body. At the same time, a viscous black liquid began to secrete from the revolver. Those black liquids directly attached to his palm, being removed from the revolver. The revolver emitted a faint halo. Click. Lin instantly opened the revolver's safety, squinting his eyes, alertly positioned near the door. The curse had been removed. Lin held his breath, his gaze becoming incredibly calm. In the terrifying silence, he could only hear his own heartbeat and the heavy footsteps from the corridor. Little by little, the stench of blood spread rapidly, and it was in the next moment that the footsteps outside the door stopped. Boom. Unprepared, a loud noise. Lin's pupils dilated instantly. In front of his chest, a hand, full of thorns, pierced through his chest, through the wall behind him, blood oozing out from the front of his chest. Thud. Lin's pupils dispersed, falling heavily on the ground. And behind him, on the solid wall, a crimson and twisted hand slowly retracted from the wall. There was no trace of damage to the wall, as if the wall was just an illusion to it. The endless smell of blood spread. Blood gushed from Lin's chest, staining the entire ground. His pupils widened, his body twitching uncontrollably. Blood flowed recklessly. Thud, thud. Footsteps echoed once again. Then, in the reflection of Lin's dilated pupils, a huge, twisted figure slowly pushed open the door and appeared at the entrance of the surgery room. What kind of monster was that? It was like a huge piece of rotten meat sewn onto its body with needles and threads, without a head, without facial features, only a giant eye protruding from the middle of the massive and foul-smelling rotten flesh. That giant eye almost occupied its entire trunk, and around the trunk there were scattered dozens of human-sized eyeballs. Around the trunk, various different arms grew out, Human hands, tentacles, claws, twisted limbs of evil spirits, and even terrifying mechanical limbs. It looked like a monstrous creature forcibly stitched together with violence. Stitched monster, chaotic evil, unmatched and powerful creation. One of the top-tier blood-flesh machines of the Demon Association. As one of the top blood-flesh machines of the Inverted Tower, its appearance will undoubtedly bring slaughter and destruction. This is a weapon specifically created by the Demon Association to hunt down those rebellious elements. It can continuously devour creatures and undergo new evolutions. Never attempt to be targeted by it. Red tentacles extended from the monster's body like snakes, climbing on the ground, and then slowly pierced into Lin's legs like syringes. Creak. The sound of blood entering the flesh echoed. It was devouring him. But almost in the same moment, those tentacles that penetrated his body to suck blood stopped. Organic identification. Human. Quality identification. Low. Priority of devouring. High. Not recommended for devouring. A harsh voice sounded in Lin's ears. Basement. Lin, cloaked in a cape, tightly covered his chest, which continued to bleed, and gritting his teeth, he pulled out a razor, slashing abruptly at his own legs. He gasped violently, sweat dripping in large drops from his forehead. Too careless. He was truly too careless. In the face of monsters of this level, you should know better. They have various methods to detect your location. After use, it can hide your aura and allow you to pass through solid objects like a ghost. The invisible and intangible spirits always become the fear in people's hearts, so the monsters of the abyss created this cape, allowing you to become like a spirit, invisible and intangible. But be careful, once you wear it, you lose all attack capabilities. Lin gritted his teeth, covering his chest, and stared fixedly at the door of the basement. These days have been too comfortable. I really forgot what kind of world I'm in. I might die at any moment. He forcefully spat out a mouthful of saliva stained with blood and visceral flesh. Without further ado, he took out a flesh-enhancing potion and poured it into his broken legs and penetrated chest. He ground his teeth, twisted his neck, and said, "Indeed, having a high constitution is useful at critical times. But I really have to thank the teacher. If it weren't for that surgery back then, I might be done for now." The potion that could work on a fairy with strong resistance to drugs demonstrated an unimaginable rapid recovery effect on a normal person's body. In just a few breaths, Lin's body was as good as new. Two thorn-covered tentacles grew out from Lin's back. The skin on the back of his neck suddenly split open, slowly revealing an upright eye. Connects to the central nervous system, can be controlled to contract and grow at will. Connects to the visual nerves, can penetrate obstacles, and monitor spectral auras. Click. He unlocked the revolver's safety, and in the next moment, Lin, cloaked in the blood-red cape, passed through the wall like a ghost. Under the scrutiny of the specter upright eye, Lin instantly saw the huge flesh monster in the corridor. Lin's spirit was highly concentrated. He, like a ghost, freely shuttled through the walls, gradually approaching the monster. Whoosh! A crimson shadow instantly passed through the monster's side in the corridor. The giant pupils of the monster, now fully recovered, slowly moved, scanning the surrounding walls. The wild arms on its body seemed to be ready for an assault. Swish! Behind it, a blood shadow flashed. Eyes appeared on the monster's back as its attention was drawn to the corridor behind. But almost at the moment when its attention was attracted to the corridor behind, from the opening in the door of the alchemy room beside it, Lin's squinted eyes emerged. "You're finished." Instantly, Lin pulled the trigger. Bang, 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 bang. 6 consecutively fired hunter bullets pierced through the door, hitting the monster. In an instant, the monster's body exploded with sacred electricity. The hunter revolver had a strong restraining effect on creatures of the dark world, especially the divine power that was most creatures' natural enemy. In almost an instant, Lin saw the monster's body become sluggish. Revolver ammunition reloading. This was a good opportunity to strike. Lin instantly drew the bone-cutting knife, but just as he was about to break through the door, he suddenly saw 6 eyeballs emerging from the 6 bullet holes. Empty gazes stared directly at him. A tremendous sense of crisis struck. Not good. Lin instantly donned the cape, hesitating for no moment, intending to pass through the wall. But it was too late. The hollow gaze immediately fell on his face. A painful low growl. Lin's facial features and the skin where it gazed began to dissolve instantly, emitting bursts of blue smoke. The gaze it had just cast carried a curse. Lin gritted his teeth, enduring the immense pain, and disappeared underground. In the basement, Lin gasped heavily. He opened a new bottle of flesh-enhancing potion, pouring it over his dissolving face and neck. The crimson liquid sizzled into the skin. The wounds on his face quickly healed. At the same time, system prompts continued to sound. Whoosh, whoosh. Lin's shadow reflected on the wall instantly pierced through with two giant tentacles. But Lin paid no attention. His gaze was serious. Using the specter upright eye, he observed the monster from a distance. He quickly saw that the 6 bullets that had just entered the monster's body were slowly pushed out by the monster's flesh. The electric current covering its body rapidly diminished. In other words, in just 2 rounds, the monster had adapted to the holy damage added by the hunter bullets. Or did it activate some special form to counter his attacks? Not good. Lin frowned. In an instant, a giant hand passed through the ground like a phantom, sweeping across his cheek, injuring his side face. It was the same evil spirit hand that had pierced his heart earlier. And it actually managed to attack him even with the blood demon cape on. Boom. Lin's body rolled heavily on the street for over 10 meters. He covered his blood-soaked left eye, gritted his teeth, quickly rolled over, and rushed underground, moving like a ghost without stopping. He quickly took out the flesh and blood regeneration potion, pouring it forcefully on his cheek. Sizzle. Flesh rapidly healed. In an instant, his neck suddenly split open, revealing a new demonic vertical eye. Double pupils overlapped. Almost simultaneously, the previously disappeared monster's presence reappeared in the field of vision between the 2 vertical eyes. The moment he saw it clearly, Lin's pupils contracted sharply. He saw the illusory giant hand chasing him relentlessly from behind. The hand's arm was still connected to the monster, but the rapidly growing arm ignored the ground obstacles, relentlessly pursuing him. And because they were both in demonic forms, the giant hand could harm him even with the cloak on. Lin could clearly see it. One of the monster's eyes on the ground was firmly locked onto him, following his every move. Damn it, Lin couldn't help but curse. Now, the situation had instantly reversed. The advantage he had under the cloak had immediately become his weakness. Because under the cloak, he couldn't make any attacking moves, not even firing a gun, while the opponent's hand could attack him. I must find a way to shake off that hand. Without any hesitation, with the help of the 4 tentacles, he increased his speed to the extreme and instantly rushed from underground into the shop. Swoosh. He violently pulled off the cloak. Like a spider, Lin quickly climbed on the wall with the tentacles, then suddenly rushed into his sleeping loft. Found it. Lin suddenly opened the cabinet door, his gaze falling on the full cabinet of potions. But almost simultaneously, in Lin's demonic vision, that demonic hand broke through the ground, directly bursting towards the loft, ignoring all obstacles. That moment, Lin's eyes narrowed. He instantly lifted the boning knife in his hand, the sharp blade flashed, and with a swoosh, he shattered the cabinet full of potions. Green potions splattered all over, staining the crimson boning knife in his hand. I swear. That moment, his muscles surged. Hands gripped the knife. With all his strength, he stabbed the floor beneath his feet. Almost simultaneously, the screeching demonic hand pierced through the floor, and the blade tainted with the potion instantly impaled the hand's palm. Crackle, a dissolving sound echoed, and the demonic hand instantly emitted baby-like screams. The potions on the floor, like sulfuric acid, quickly made the skin of the demonic hand peel off. This was researched by his teacher, a potion that allowed physical beings to interact with demonic entities. As an apprentice, he prepared a lot of these potions for facing various clients. He had to be well prepared. Splatter. Lin menacingly pulled out the boning knife, slashing towards the arm. The demonic hand slammed against the wall, twisting, smoking as if burnt. Lin gasped heavily, without any hesitation. He immediately reached out to grab the other potions from the cabinet. He knew this was no place to stay for long. He had to. A thin hand emerged directly, piercing through the back of his neck, grabbing his spine. Drops of crimson blood fell. The vertical eye on the back of Lin's neck trembled because he recognized the hand that attacked him. Because that hand was very familiar. Because that was the fairy's hand. And he instantly remembered the reason the fairy came to the potion shop. She said she encountered a giant, almost had her head bitten off, and ultimately escaped by sacrificing one arm. Turns out, the giant she encountered was this, which means, after devouring her arm, that monster also gained strong resistance to potions. Despair. Overwhelming despair. But just as the hand was about to snap his spine, Lin roared, and all the blood in his body instantly gathered on the 4 tentacles. Under his extreme control, the 4 tentacles twined and pierced the small hand that held his spine. Crack. Even so, there were still cracks in his spine. But Lin's final counterattack worked. Under the entanglement of his 4 tentacles, the hand became stiff and loosened. Seizing this last opportunity, Lin forcefully broke free from the hand's restraint. Turning ferociously, the boning knife in his hand swept horizontally. Splatter. The arm, along with his 4 tentacles, was instantly split in 2. The small hand fell heavily to the ground. He slumped exhaustedly in front of the cabinet. At this moment, he didn't even have time to use the flesh and blood regeneration potion because, in his demonic vision, the monster had already returned to the entrance of the potion shop. The situation was urgent. At this critical moment, Lin forcefully extended his blood-soaked hand from his chest, grabbing his ultimate trump card from his chest. The monster's image instantly appeared in Lin's mind, and the demonic eye stared fixedly at the monster downstairs. "Let's play," he grinned menacingly. Creak. In an instant, his 5 fingers pierced into it, and the black torrent surged out as if countless demons were screaming inside. As if the heart was a fountain gushing out. And almost in an instant, downstairs, the giant monster's body suddenly froze in place, the massive eyeball on its body shrinking instantly. For a moment, it seemed like its core suffered unimaginable damage. Snap, snap, snap. The eyes on its body burst open instantly, and one after another, the arms growing from its body immediately seemed out of control, wildly twisting and tearing at its own body. Faces appeared one after another in its bloated body, screaming and creating protrusions resembling facial features, as if something was trying to break out. Hardcore. Unknown effect impact. Holy resistance form malfunction. Demon perception malfunction. Cell restraint weakening. Curse restraint weakening. Emergency repair initiated. Countdown. 20, 19, 18. In the final moment of Lin's paralysis and nerve damage, he gritted his teeth and, with the last ounce of strength, opened a bottle of flesh and blood regeneration potion. At the moment the potion splashed onto his palm, the damage to his spine caused him to lose control of his body. However, the potion continued to rapidly take effect, continuously repairing his damaged tissues. 20 seconds. Hopefully, it's enough. He clenched his teeth. The damage to his spine had almost severed his control over his limbs. He urgently needed new limbs. And just in the next moment, the system prompt finally sounded. Crack. Almost at the same time, a crimson snake suddenly protruded from Lin's left eye socket. A snake of flesh and blood bred from the brain, with an intense bloodthirsty impulse. The brain snake suddenly opened its huge mouth, biting down on the heart of the faceless demon that was attached to Lin's chest, drinking greedily. Crimson blood splattered. It seemed a massive conflict occurred between the two. The brain snake started tearing at the heart, and the heart also reacted, its surface continuously producing fine flesh and blood tissues wrapping around the snake as if trying to devour it. While Lin lay there, witnessing this absurd scene, breathing heavily. The brain and the heart were at war. This terrifying scene might only appear in this dark world, but also because of the entanglement between the heart and the brain snake, Lin's rapidly being consumed blood received significant relief, and the flesh and blood regeneration potion began to rapidly repair his damaged spine. Just in time. Downstairs, the countless struggling limbs that were chaotic before had calmed down. The giant pupils of the monster, frozen in place, moved slightly, and the organism's entire body began to move slowly. Core repair completed. Initiating takeover of body tissues. Target threat index adjustment. Extremely high. Target devouring value adjustment. Highest priority. Hunt initiated. The giant pupils lit up with red light, suddenly lifting, and the gaze landed on the ceiling. And in that moment, its massive body pierced through the ceiling, crashing down on the attic on the second floor. Its gaze swept over the walls and floor, stained with blood. But there was no trace of Lin. At the same time, on the street filled with rolling black mist, cloaked in a cape, Lin twisted and stumbled along the street. As he broke through the fog, a slender figure appeared in Lin's field of vision. On the street above, a faint humming sound could be heard. In the next moment, a woman in a blood-red dress, with a smirk on her lips, carrying a child in her arms, slowly approached from a distance. Her body was covered in blood, and she had a serene expression. In her other hand, she held 3 heads, with straws inserted into them. The blood-dressed spirit also noticed Lin running towards her in a stumbling manner, her expression slightly stunned. The kid from the pharmacy. A hint of surprise. She instantly noticed the blood all over Lin's body, as well as the tentacles breaking out from his back and the snake emerging from his eye sockets. "Why didn't you come find me tonight?" The blood-dressed spirit, holding the child, raised her crimson lips slightly, her eyes filled with charm. Apparently, Lin's blood-stained appearance seemed to fit her aesthetic better. She lifted the 3 heads in her hand, touched her face sweetly, and tilted her head. "It's really troublesome. My daughter is currently in the stage of growing, and if she doesn't get some good nutritional supplements, she might not develop well. So, as a mother, I can only do it myself." The cute child moved her ears, sucking on the straw, and made a sound. Examining Lin's appearance, the blood-dressed spirit smiled. Speak, my little sweetie, did you encounter something you can't solve? Otherwise, with your temperament, you wouldn't have hurriedly come to find big sister, right? I've indeed run into some trouble, and it's quite substantial. I tried to handle it on my own, but as you can see, he extended his arm, looking innocent. I've at least lost a ton of blood. The blood-dressed specter chuckled. It seems even our thoroughly wicked apothecary has challenges he can't overcome. So, what's the deal? I know you're super strong, and if you help me get rid of the monster chasing me, I'll waive your bill for the next 5 months. How about that? Affordable, just this once. Don't miss this opportunity. The blood-dressed specter continued to smile, showing no sign of action. Since you mentioned being chased, aren't you worried? Why are you so calm standing here and chatting with me? Aren't you in a hurry? The blood-dressed specter's smile became even brighter. Behind them, a rolling sea of blood mist continued to sweep towards them. So, let's make a deal. I know, madam, that you're exceptionally strong. If you can help me take down the monster chasing me, I'll waive your bill for 5 months. How about that? I assume you don't really want to see me dead. The blood-dressed specter continued to smile. It seems the sly one has me figured out. But since you're asking me to name my price, I won't hold back. Her tongue lightly licked her lips, and then she leaned forward, her vibrant red lips gently brushing against his cheek. A captivating scent of blood filled Lin's nostrils. Phew, seems you haven't surrendered before me yet. That voice sounded like a demonic whisper in his ear. So, come and beg me, kneel before me, lick my toes, tell me you're willing to submit to me, and I'll help you properly. The corner of her mouth, pressed against Lin's face, lifted slightly, full of playfulness. A brief silence. It seemed as if the air had frozen. Is this flirting? Lin smiled, tilting his head to look at her. No. The blood-dressed specter maintained her smiling expression, saying, I don't like flirting in moments like these. Silence. A rumbling spread around. The next moment, Lin's lips curled. See you. He patted her shoulder, instantly moving away from her. With the hood of the blood cloak covering his head, he swiftly moved into the dark mist of the street. If we can open for business tomorrow morning, I'll help you lift the curse. Of course, I can offer you a suitable discount. Until next time. Lin raised his chin, giving a thumbs up to the cute child curiously turning in her arms, revealing a shiny smile. In the next moment, he disappeared into the distant mist. No explanation, no response. It seemed that this question didn't require any answer. In place, the blood-dressed specter stood stunned, gazing into the distance where Lin had disappeared. Seemingly bewildered, somewhat amused, somewhat admiring. This guy. She touched her forehead, showing a hint of helplessness on her face. He's really... Splatter. A tentacle instantly shot into the black mist, pulling back Lin, who was about to leave. Lin hadn't reacted yet, and he was immediately embraced by the blood-dressed specter with a hint of indulgence, crushing him fiercely in her arms. So cute. Just kidding. Just kidding. Indeed, you're the boy who can lift sister's curse. Occasionally showing some manliness, you're truly special and flavorful. Love it. Love it. The cute child swayed the straw in its hand. The blood-dressed specter, with a face of contentment and indulgence, held Lin's head like a doll, constantly twisting her body. Lin was like a helpless boat, struggling continuously, but completely unable to escape the evil ravaging. The huge bosom was like turbulent waves, making Lin rise and fall. Finally able to breathe, Lin struggled to stick his head out from the huge bosom. At that moment, he saw the face that had split open, revealing sharp thorns and tentacles right in front of him. Splash! In an instant, countless grotesque and black tentacles shot out from her body. Then, like vines, they stabbed into the ground around, cracking the ground into countless giant rocks. The tentacles easily enveloped the entire street. Boom, intense sonic booms, dozens of loud noises. The ejected giant rocks instantly stopped the steps of the monster in the blood mist. As the blood mist dispersed, the twisted, fleshy puppet slowly appeared in their field of vision. The giant vertical pupil on its body stared at Lin and the blood-dressed specter. Target confirmed. Initiating hunt. High-intensity interference from the second target detected. Conducting information analysis. Species. Spectre aggregation. Devouring priority. High. Lin looked in shock at this scene. The blood-dressed specter smiled, handing the cute child to Lin and elegantly stepping forward. The long and fair fingers grew almost half a meter of black blood-stained nails. The wild hair instantly transformed into numerous faces of snakes. Snap! When she raised her head again, she had turned into a demonic ghost full of crazy delight. Lin, you've really stirred up a tough monster this time. Ha ha ha. Her mouth split to behind her ears, and the long nails swayed in front of her, making abnormal and sick laughter in her throat. Lin stared, holding the child in his arms, quickly stepping back. Be careful, this guy is not easy to deal with. Don't underestimate it. Lin quickly shared all the information he knew with the blood-dressed specter. He detailed the characteristics he had tested, the methods to deal with it, everything, without omitting anything. Not easy to deal with? Haha. The blood-dressed specter's smile became more and more insane. She slowly swayed her body. The chaotic curse on her body seemed to rise substantially, and even Lin, standing behind her, felt a huge chill and madness. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.